Whitebook, Judy Billig, David Promoff, Michael Schecht, Allison Mars, Miriam Major, Charlie Orvieto, Robin Kettler, Barbara Goldfarb, Michelle Schecht, Michelle Rafur Schleimer for Michelle, Rana Siegel, and Brian Koch. So the spouses of our past presidents I just called to please join us by the ark. As the ark is open, we ask you to rise. The captain will begin to chant as the Sifrei Torah are brought forward.
Or zaru ala tzadik u'lishrei levei simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik u'lishrei levei simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik u'lishrei levei simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik u'lishrei lev 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 simcha.
By the authority of the court on high, by the authority of this court below, with divine consent and with the consent of this congregation, we grant permission to pray with those who have transgressed. B'yeshiva shel mala, bottom of page 204.
Mishiva shel mala u'mishiva shel mata al da'at ha'makom ve'al da'at ha'kahal anu matirin lehitpalel im ha'avareyanim. Vishiva shel mala u'vishiva shel mata al da'at ha'makom ve'al da'at ha'kahal anu matirin leitpalel im ha'avareyanim. Vishiva shel mala vishiva shel mata al da'at ha'makom ve'al da'at ha'kahal anu matirin leitpalel im ha'avareyanim.
Before the chanting of the first Kol Nidre, we'll have the lighting of the Yontif candles to begin to welcome the Chag. Lori Farber will be lighting candles. We ask you to all join in the recitation of the bracha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel yom tov.
Amen.
Baruch Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyemanu v'higianu lahazman hazeh.
Good Yontif. The first chanting of the Kol Nidre, top of page 205 in the Hebrew Aramaic.
Kol Nidre ve'esarei v'achramei ve'konamei ve'chinuyei ve'kinu sei u'shuot din darena u'deishtabana u'deacharimna v'diasarena lenafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim u'miyom kippurim haba ad yom kippurim haba aleinu haba aleinu letova kulhon icharat navehon kulhon yehon sharan shevikin shevitin betenin nutalin la sheririn vela kayamim nidrana la nidre vesarana la esarei ushevuatana la shevuot.
The second in the English on page 205. All vows, renunciations, bans, oaths, formulas of obligation, pledges, and promises that we vow or promise to ourselves and to God from this Yom Kippur to the next. May it approach us for good as we hereby retract. May they all be undone, repealed, canceled, voided, annulled, and regarded as neither valid nor binding. Our vows should not be considered vows, our renunciations should not be considered renunciations, and our promises shall not be considered promises. The rabbi's view was, try the best you can, But if you promise and you vow, you're going to disappoint yourself and others. Give it your best go. Try and avoid vows and promises. We're not always up to them. For the third chanting, the Torahs are switched to the next generation. Daniel Arazi, Noah Kirkin, Annie Roisman, Lily Markovich, Jamie Gregorowitz, Jessica Bonwit, Corey Mars, Alex Rosenblum, Adam Scheck, Caleb Buchholz, Jolie Chaffetz, Haley Scheck, Ryan and Ross Kotzen, and Brooke Koch. We did one in English. Yeah. I think, yeah, she is, but maybe she's next door. I don't know. Let's see.
Who's missing?
I don't see Annie, but Annie might be Annie. But maybe she's next door.
Next door. Wait, there's another
Let's see.
child.
Okay. She's not coming then. Well, Alex, right? Alex Spilder. Spilder. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to get someone.
There's another one by her cat. She has two granddaughters.
Oh, let's give it to her. Okay, yeah. Yeah, let's give it to her.
Kol Nidre ve'esarei v'acharamei ve'konamei ve'chinuyei ve'kinusei u'shvuot din darena u'deishtabana u'deacharimna v'diasarna l'nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim v'yom kippurim v'aba v'yom kippurim haba aleinu haba aleinu letova kul hon ikarat navehon kul hon yeon sharan shevitin vetelinu mevutalin la sheririn vela kayamim nidrana la nidre esara la esare ushevu atana la Shavuot.
Nislach Chol Adat B'nei Yisrael.
ונשלח כל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגם. ונשלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה, ונשלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי לכל העם בשגגה.
The entire congregation of the people of Israel shall be forgiven, as well as the strangers who dwell among them, for all have erred.
סלח נא לעוונם הזה, כי גודל חסדך וכאשר נשאת להם הזה ממצרים בידינה, ושם נאמר, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך, ויאמר אדוני סלחתי כדבריך.
And God replied, I have forgiven as you have asked. Shehechianu.
Baruch
Let's sing together.
Your turn.
Shehecheyanu vekimanu vehigiyanu lazman hazeh. Shehecheyanu vekimanu vehigiyanu lazman hazeh. Lazman hazeh. Lazman hazeh. Praised are you, ruler of time and space, for granting us life, for sustaining us, and for bringing us to this new year, to this Yom Kippur 5783. Sifrei Torah returned to the ark. When the ark is closed, you'll be able to be seated. You may be seated. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Cantor, for beginning our Kol Nidre with the melodies not only we're familiar with, but the Shechianu that this congregation has done since Rabbi Max Lipschitz arrived. So that Shechianu reminds us, really it's renewal. We're starting to come alive again. We're getting back to being together for these high holidays. And for those who still couldn't make it here tonight, we're so pleased that you're able to watch and listen, and we're very aware that you're there and present for our services. Your rabbis and your cantor, your entire professional staff will all tell you that one of the secrets, one of the most important elements to Beth Torah's success over these many decades has been the amazing cadre of lay leaders, the commitment and the devotion of the presidents, and uniquely, the continued support and involvement of past presidents. I had a friend of mine who was visiting with us one Shabbos, who's very involved. He was president of the shul. He was very involved in the United Synagogue, national leader. And it happened to be Rosh Chodesh. And on Rosh Chodesh, our custom is to call up the past presidents on that Shabbat announcing the Rosh Chodesh so they could hold the Torahs as we chant the prayer to welcome the new month. And there were 4 or 5 past presidents there. And he told me afterwards he'd never seen that before. He said, that's astonishing. The way your past presidents are still, they're here. They're involved. And he said, that's your secret. That's your secret. The presidents and the past presidents and the leadership from decade to decade that remains involved. That's our secret. Every rabbi can tell you that every president was a confidant and a friend to the clergy. They supported us. They backed us up. They helped us. Another amazing thing, going back to that window, Hayashan Yitchadesh V'Chadash Titkadesh, the old will be renewed, and the new will be made holy. The ability of Beth Torah to find new and younger leaders who have the wisdom and the support of the more experienced past presidents is another key to the secret of Beth Torah's ability to reimagine, to renew itself as time moves on. The past presidents are the most thrilled to see new leadership step forward, younger leadership. They know it means what they worked so hard to preserve has a very bright future. Our newest younger president, who follows Jill Koch, who is also a newer, younger leader, is Michael Katzen. Michael and his wife, Marla, who is an active leader on her own in the Hochberg-Posnack Jewish Day School system, where so many of our kids have been educated, are part of a large Beth Torah family. They have uncles here, aunts, cousins. There's lots of girls, so they all have different names from having married. But I can tell you, this family's everywhere in this synagogue, especially up there reading Torah for us, as they did many of them on high holidays. They are a 3-generational Beth Torah family. Michael married into it. Marla was basically born into it, as were Ross and Ryan, their kids. A president takes over in June in our synagogue, and immediately, summer camp, high holidays, the beginning of all the schools, the busiest time of the year. And Michael jumped in, giving Beth Torah inordinate amounts of time. People coming through the office would think he was staff because he was there so much. He has been consistently at our Shabbat services so we could meet and greet and be with the shul goers. Simply put, he is everywhere. Joe Koch came in with the complications of COVID, and Michael has come in with the complications of reopening, reimagining. Nothing has been normal for almost 4 years. But Beth Torah is thriving because leaders like Jill, like Michael, like our past presidents, they stood up and they stepped up and they accepted the challenge in the most challenging of times. He has our deepest respect and friendship, and I am proud and privileged to introduce him officially on this, his first Kol Nidre as president of Beth Torah Bnei Brak campus. And he can't wait until I get to talk about him as an honored past president. That's the reward for being president of Beth Torah. Michael Kotzen.
Good evening, everyone. Shana Tova. I hope you are having a wonderful new year. Me, shofar, show good. I'm so happy I got laughs at that joke. I am Michael Kotzen, and I am honored and proud to serve as your Beth Torah Bnei Brak campus president for the next 2 years. We are so happy to have a full house in person for the high holidays this year. It's amazing to see. This year, we don't need to be shofar away from each other. Okay, I hear the groaning. I promise no more shofar puns. There are so many people here who I don't know. I'm definitely not as social as our last president, but I do tell cornier jokes. So let me spend a few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a member of Beth Torah since 1999. One of the first things I did when I moved to Miami after law school was to join a synagogue, this synagogue. 4 years later, I met my wife, Marla, who had just moved back to South Florida to practice emergency medicine at Miami Children's Hospital. I learned that she and her family were members here too, and our extended family has a block of seats in that front corner for many, many years. Giving back to our Jewish community, as Rabbi Farber said, is important to my family. Marla is the board chair for the Posnack East School Board and actively involved in Posnack's main campus school board, where our 2 boys, Ryan and Ross, attend high school. An enormous thank you to my family for allowing me to do this. I know that you are sacrificing by not having me at home as much. Well, sometimes that's a good thing. But when I'm at home, I'm usually on some type of Beth Torah Zoom. I love that you enjoy helping me do what I need to do as president. I appreciate your support, your attendance at services and events, and your putting up with my stress and this time commitment. I really, really thank you for everything. Around 12 years ago, I bumped into my former boss, who I see back there in the back today, who is also a member here, and I told him that I joined Beth Torah's board. He congratulated me, but he said not to be discouraged or dismayed, observing that this is a thankless position. I have had many people tell me this, especially recently, but I believe they are wrong. While time-consuming and sometimes frustrating and stressful, this is one of the most special, rewarding, and gratifying journeys that I have taken. Before being president, I have held 6 different positions on our executive board, and I love trying to make Beth Torah a better place. Our synagogue is special. There is no doubt about this. For the first time, we have more than 800 member families. We know that there are so many choices of where you can worship and what community to be a part of, and you picked this shul. We don't take that for granted, and we thank you for that. There are a wide array of reasons why you may have picked Beth Torah, so let's discuss some of them. I would first like to speak about this beautiful sanctuary, which Rabbi Farber so eloquently discussed on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. This is the first high holidays that we have spent here. Many of you have prayed weekly here since January. Some of you are seeing this room for the first time today. Our sanctuary renovation committee has been incredibly hardworking, and they succeeded in designing a beautiful sanctuary and raising $7 million. I want to thank Mike Siegel, Rob Goldfarb, Marshall Baltic, Stephen Scheck, Rich Berger, Adriana Halak, Edgar Halak, Elaine Cohen, and Jill Koch for serving on this committee. This sanctuary is absolutely incredible, was a labor of love and a lot of hard work. You will not find a nicer sanctuary anywhere in South Florida, and it is a beautiful place to spend Shabbats and the high holidays. And don't listen to what Rabbi Farber said last week. Those chairs are not for sleeping. You can't be a synagogue without prayer. This is absolutely no question. We have the best clergy anywhere. Who agrees with me? Our rabbis are second to none. Our rabbis are always there for our whole community, whether it is at a life cycle event, a Shabbat service, a board meeting, dealing with a problem, or just to talk. I can tell you that our rabbis have fielded calls about literally everything, from congregants who simply can't sleep to a parent who has lost their child. Whatever it is, whenever it is, they are always there for us. But there is so much more to our rabbis. They are smart, caring, engaging, helpful, forward-thinking, and are leaders. In fact, our Rabbi Roisman is now president of the Rabbinical Assembly of Greater Miami, leading 100 other rabbis in this city. They chose him, and luckily, we had the foresight many years ago to choose him and Rabbi Farber as well. Thank you, rabbis, for everything you do for us every day. Being a rabbi at a synagogue of 830 families is a lot of work. As a result, I am very excited to announce that we have formed a search committee led by Rick Mars to find Beth Torah's next rabbi of the future. Don't worry, Rabbi Roisman and Rabbi Farber are not going anywhere, right? We look forward to having a new young rabbi to learn from, to pray with, and to work with Rabbis Farber and Roisman. I don't know if you've noticed, but we have a brand new cantor this year, Marcos Ashkenazi, and we hit the jackpot with him. Every congregant who has listened to him sing or has met and engaged with him loves him. He has especially hit it off with our kids, whether camp-aged or in high school. He has brought new and fun melodies to our services and has brought a new style of ruach and music to Beth Torah. Please meet him if you haven't yet. You'll see how wonderful he is off the bima as well. We are so fortunate to welcome Marcos and his family to Beth Torah. We are also happy to welcome back Chazanit Karen Niznik back to Beth Torah from Argentina for another year. She brings with her an extra level of spirit to our services, and we love having her here to lead our high holiday services with the rest of our clergy. Our Shabbat services are incredible. If you don't come to our Friday night services, please come once in a while. You have no idea what you're missing, and we would love to see you. We also have a dedicated group of congregants who attend Minyan on a daily basis. We have a Zoom Minyan twice each day, and I'm happy that we have not failed to make a Minyan even throughout all of COVID. Thank you to this great group of congregants who make this part of their daily schedule. The next thing that a successful synagogue must have is education. This is our future, and the future here at Beth Torah is bright. Let's start with our youngest, our preschoolers. Our Susie Fisher Early Childhood Academy is just amazing. We have an incredible group of teachers and administrators who make sure that our Beth Torah toddlers are ready for kindergarten. Our ECA is led by Sandra Kopp, who has my appreciation simply because she works each day with nearly 250 little kids. Sometimes my house is loud with just 2 kids, or as my wife would say, her 3 kids. Our preschool is the best, a leader in the community, and we are lucky to have kids running around our campus, learning and having fun every single day. Our ECA also gives back to our community. When we learned that a Ukrainian family who recently relocated to South Florida did not have a school for their young daughter to attend, we quickly reached out, and she is one of our newest ECA students. As I will expand on later, Helping those in need has always been part of Beth Torah's DNA. When our youngest kids aren't in the ECA, they are in our awesome summer camp, Shirley Schreiber's Camp Simcha. Last summer, we had 210 campers who came home with smiling faces every day, which means happy parents. We are so lucky to have Jenny Buchholz, where's Jenny? Upstairs. We are so lucky to have Jenny Buchholz, who has been part of our community at Beth Torah forever, to direct our camp. We again have fun and caring counselors and volunteer CITs, like my kids Ryan and Ross, who spend their summers making sure that these campers have a summer to remember. The kids and parents were happy, which is what is most important. And then we get to the teaching of our older kids. Gabby Roskovsky is our awesome director of lifelong learning. This means that she makes sure that we have education opportunities for our members, whether they are 6 years old or 96 years old. Tuition at our Sheck Family Religious School for kindergarten through 5th grade is included in your membership. Our Wednesday night religious school program has great teachers, and our students learn so much. We also have the High Club, where our staff goes to several area elementary schools to bring our Jewish education to them after school. We at Beth Torah make sure that we can provide a quality Jewish education to every Jewish child in the community who wants to learn about our culture, religion, and language. Our education program doesn't stop at 5th grade, though, as we have a wonderful Journey to Mitzvah program and a Bar and Bat Mitzvah program. This last year, we had 35 B'nai Mitzvahs at Beth Torah, and another 25 are planned for this following year. We are also proud of our Passport to Bar Mitzvah program, where through an endowment, Beth Torah will match a portion of funds that you prepay for Bar and Bat Mitzvahs. But wait, there's more education. It just doesn't stop. Kind of like this speech. We offer education opportunities for everyone at Beth Torah, even if you aren't a kid anymore. Our young at heart learn at our adult education classes, learning about the conflict in Ukraine, the election in Israel, Chagall, music, Hanukkah, and more. Come to these classes, learn something new, and maybe even make a new friend along the way. For all ages, a sense of community is important at Beth Torah. We have an award-winning youth program with more than 50 kids participating. This begins in 3rd grade and goes all the way through our high school-age USYers, led by their president, Lily Markovich. When Jenny Buchholz isn't running our camp, she is helping our kids enjoy that sense of community, sense of Jewish community, by having fun, educational, and meaningful events. Our community doesn't stop there. Our Sisterhood and Men's Club provide another level of community to those who may not be as young as our kids. The Men's Club, led by Arnie Schechter, has events like the Worldwide Tefillin Wrap in January and Thanksgiving meal deliveries to Holocaust survivors and the homebound. Our Sisterhood is a truly wonderful group who works so hard to keep the women of Beth Torah engaged. Whether it is selling honey or flowers, having a luncheon honoring Laurie Farber just a few weeks ago, or karaokeing, they are always doing something for the sisters of our synagogue, led by their co-presidents, Etta Epstein and Stephanie Krutchik. Gemilut Chasadim, acts of kindness, is part of who we are at Beth Torah. For instance, earlier this year, one of our ECA teachers had to deal with losing her car in a car fire right here in the Beth Torah parking lot. Our ECA community banded together, led by the Moms of Kulam, our PTA, and they were able to raise money to purchase a new car for our teacher in need. This is just one example of our unbelievable community. We also have a special needs Seder each Passover, where one of our members, Rabbi Botnick, leads the Seder for those with disabilities. Our special needs Seder has grown from 19 attendees to more than 200 earlier this year. Our Social Action Committee has been working as a team for more than 8 years. They love what they do, which is helping those who are not as fortunate as we are. Their signature event is a Mother's Day event where they prepare items for mothers who need assistance at various local shelters. This year, they started a new project where they go to downtown Miami once a month with food and hygiene supplies for our city's homeless. Not only do they feed them, but they stay there and talk with them. They engage in conversations with them. They make them feel special. We at Beth Torah are always part of our community at large. We respond in emergencies, whether for the tragedy at Surfside, a hurricane, or collecting funds for Ukraine. Currently, this committee is collecting winter clothes for Ukraine. The deadline to donate these clothes is this Friday. They are also hosting a Baracco night on October 19th to raise money and supplies for victim of Hurricane Ann. You can still donate even if you don't play cards by donating online. Are you interested in helping with this committee? We have an amazing group of volunteers, but please feel free to reach out to our rabbi's wife, Gisela, who would love to make this group even bigger because they do so much for the community. Finally, due to the generosity of many members over the decades, we have a foundation that provides scholarships every year to our members to help our members send their kids to Israel and Camp Ramah. Speaking of Israel, I encourage you to go on the Miami Greater Jewish Federation's mission to Israel this April. We will have 2 Beth Torah buses filled with exciting congregants and our rabbis. Feel free to contact Barbara Goldfarb for more information. And if you like to travel, keep a lookout for information about our Beth Torah trip to Greece with Rabbi Roisman. Our prior European vacations led by Rabbi Roisman have been a big hit, and we hope to share this experience with as many of you as possible. How am I doing, shofar? Sorry. We make sure to have high-quality programming at Beth Torah. We want our members to have fun, to enjoy coming to synagogue, to make new friends, and also to spend time with old friends. Our Director of Engagement, Programming, and Membership, Andrea Beck, is always thinking of creative ways to enhance your Beth Torah experience. It could be anything from a Havdalah with the cantor, to a whiskey tasting, to a Shabbat dinner with an international theme. We have creative events at every holiday that aren't just for kids. We have themed Shabbat services, and we plan to have many, many more events in person here at Beth Torah. And of course, don't forget our yearly gala. This year, we are so proud to honor Marshall and Rochelle Baltic with Beth Torah's Lifetime Achievement Award, Warren Zinn with our Community Service Award, and Jenny Buckholtz, whose name you've now heard 3 times tonight, with the Young Leadership Award. These are valued members who have been involved at Beth Torah for literally their entire lives, and we are so lucky to have them as part of our community. This event will be in the spring, and we hope to see all of you there. Speaking of Marshall, where is Marshall? There he is. I want to give him a special mention. At the end of May, he retired as a Beth Torah employee after 8 decades, yes, 8 decades, serving Beth Torah in so many different capacities. But, as we predicted in June, he hasn't stayed away. Retirement for Marshall only means that he's not receiving a salary. He continues post-retirement to be instrumental in preparing this community for the high holidays and in raising money for Beth Torah. He has been working nonstop for us over the last few months, helping with seating, ticketing, honors, and many other initiatives. The high holidays will not be the same without Marshall. Thank you. While all of our volunteers are amazing, I want to thank Edgardo Aymar and Howard Chaffetz for the dozens of hours they have spent, along with Marshall, in preparing this synagogue for the high holidays. The work they did to help was immense, and we owe them a lot of thanks for assisting when we were short-staffed to make these holidays happen. We have a wonderful board of directors here and an executive committee who work so hard. I want to first mention our executive board by name because they spend multiple hours per week to make Beth Torah a synagogue that we are proud of. Howard Chaffetz, Lizette Weingard, Julie Berkowitz, Cody Noodleman, Mindy Kirkin, Stephanie Kleiner, Pablo Oberman, Edgardo Imar, Michelle Scheck, Etta Epstein, Michelle Kabak, Steve Willinger, Andy Rodman, and Jill Koch. Thank you. Can all of our board members please stand up? We have more than 2. Thank you all. These are volunteers who spend their valuable time to work for Beth Torah to make us great. They spend countless hours in meetings, planning events, and making sure that this synagogue is one that we are all proud of. Please look around at who is standing and spend a minute to say thank you. For those who are not standing, would you like to help out? We would love to have you. We have countless committees that you can work on, we have events you can plan, and we would love your help. I want to make mention of one other special member of our executive board, and that is Jill Koch. Jill led this synagogue as president through COVID, obviously a difficult and unprecedented experience. Clearly, Jill hasn't had enough, and she is still at Beth Torah virtually every day as the immediate past president, almost never misses a Shabbat service, and helps us in every way possible. She goes so far above and beyond. Jill, you are amazing, and the synagogue would not be what it is without your help and devotion. Jill mentioned last year during her high holiday speech from the next room over that she was disappointed that she was never able to give a Kol Nidre speech from this podium, first due to COVID, and then because the sanctuary is being renovated. She deserves that honor, and I would like to allow her the opportunity to read a paragraph of this speech. Please join me, Jill. And I'm going to move on while she's making her way up. I first want to talk about one more member of our board, Betty Joyfield. Hi, Betty Joy. Betty Joy's in the back. Betty Joyfield is always here to help. She ushers every Shabbat service. She makes high holiday calls. She serves on every committee that she is asked to serve on. She is the first one here, the last one to leave, and is always here to help our synagogue. Betty Joy deserves to be thanked by everybody. Read the next one. Yeah, you're reading. I also want to mention and thank the past presidents who you saw on the bima just a few minutes ago, and some are still up here. Their devotion to the synagogue did not end at the conclusion of their terms. They continued to be generous, both financial and in terms of their time. They are always available to me and for others to call and pick their brains. Thank you for always being there for us and for being leaders in perpetuity. Joe's mad at me.
Hi, this was not planned. Our professional office staff is working hard as they always want what's best for our synagogue. Without them, we would not be the wonderful synagogue that we are. Thank you to Sherry, Leah, Terry, Orly, Jolie, Ruthie, and Laura, and the entire ECA staff, including Amy and Grace. Marla Cohen works really hard in getting the synagogue ready for high holidays. Whether preparing seating, ticketing, parking, flowers, and so much more, she works so hard to make this high holiday experience and every worship experience one that is meaningful for all of us. Thank you, Marla.
Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me and Jill. I know you have heard a similar talk every year, and I know that you know what our synagogue has to offer, that we have amazing worship opportunities, education, social action, and fun. I want to conclude with a very short story about a man who visited his friend in Jerusalem. The man asked his friend what time it was, and he went to his balcony, looked up at the sun, and said it's 3:00 p.m. The friend was surprised that he could tell the time from the sun, and his host told him that he doesn't even own a watch or a clock. So his friend asked him, "What do you do at night?" He said, "I use my shofar." Huh? He was puzzled. The Israeli said, "Come back tonight and you'll understand." So the friend came back at night, and the man went out to his balcony and loudly blew his shofar. Immediately, 3 people could be heard screaming, "It's 3 a.m. and you're blowing the shofar?" Like the story, the shofar is, in fact, a clock. It reminds us of the passage of time. We hear it every year, and we are 1 year closer to the time that we will never be able to hear it again. When the shofar is blown, realize it is keeping time. Here's what I ask of you. Before you hear the shofar blow again in 1 year, take advantage of at least some of the opportunities that Beth Torah has to offer. Our clergy staff and volunteers work so hard to optimize these opportunities for you. We want to see you more. Please come sample what Beth Torah has to offer, not just when you have a bar mitzvah, a wedding, or a death in the family, but just because. Come to a Shabbat service once a month. We don't want to see you just for the high holidays. Come to one of our events, try an adult education class, join the social action group, attend a sisterhood event, or bring your kids to a youth program. I promise you, you will enjoy these events, they will make you feel good, and you will want to come more often. Thank you for being a part of this community, and thank you, as always, for your support. Remember that we are lucky to have this community for the last 82 years, so please don't take it for granted. Gamar Hatima Tova. May you all be sealed in the book of life. Thank you.
That was amazing. Wow. Thank you, Michael. As I said, past presidents and presidents make this shul extraordinary, and we're just used to it. And the relationship of the rabbis, the clergy, with the leadership, we're on the same page, we're moving the same direction. It's a friendship, and that's what you're used to. It's always been that way. It isn't that way in every synagogue. I'll just give you a quick story to illustrate it. Rabbi of a synagogue takes ill, not too serious, but he ends up in the hospital. A few days later, the vice president of the synagogue comes to visit him. Thank you for visiting me. He says, well, I came here to tell you, Rabbi, that we had a board meeting, and by a vote of 10-6, we want to wish you a full and speedy recovery. We would get 99%, I think. Pretty good. So thank you. Michael, it's going to be an extraordinary, wonderful 2 years. So we're going to continue now with the service and then the sermon after, in the middle of the service, after we're done with the Amidah. So we go now to the evening service to welcome in Yom Kippur, the Baruch Hu, and we call forward to the Ark Jean and Bruce Smoller, Linda and Keith Trutman, Amy and the Gittlemans, Nina Markovich, and Ann and Rob Markovich. Please join us on the bima as the Ark will be open. We turn now to page 207, the call to worship, the official beginning of the Yom Kippur Kol Nidre service.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
The Ark is closed. You may be seated. We continue with the first paragraph of the Baruch Hu. Praise you, Lord, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's division, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, creates day and night, rolls light before darkness and darkness from light.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. Baruch atah Adonai amari baravim.
The second bracha before the Shema on page 208. God's love for the people of Israel expressed through the gift of Torah and mitzvot. Ahavat olam, top of page 208.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha v'ta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, V'shochveinu v'kumeinu, Nasiach bechukecha, V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, ובמצוותיך ליום עולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ואורך ימינו והם נהגי יומם ולילה, יומם ולילה. יאי די 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 די, יאי די 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 די, יאי די Yai lai lai yai yai dai dai yai dai yai dai 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 Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
Page 2, first paragraph, V'ahavta. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'v'lechtecha v'aderech u'v'shochbecha u'v'kumecha u'kshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha. Second and third paragraphs of the Shema on page 209. V'haya'im shmoa tishmu el mitzvotai. Then you will remember and fulfill all my mitzvot. Be holy before your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Truly, Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Page 210, God's redemption of the people of Israel through taking us out of slavery, taking us to freedom from Egypt to the land of Israel. God performs wonders beyond understanding, marvels beyond all reckoning. God places us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter, leads us past the false altars of our enemies. God exalted us above all those who hated us, avenged us with the miracles before Pharaoh, offered signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. God smote in anger all of Egypt's firstborn, brought Israel from its midst to lasting freedom, led them through the divided waters of the Sea of Reeds. Moses, Miriam, and the people of Israel sang this joyful song of salvation and redemption to God. Middle of page 210, Mi Chamocha.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora, nora tehilot, osefele, malchutecha ra'uvanecha bokei hayav, livnei Moshe, ze eli, anu ve'amru Adonai imloch, le'olam va'ed, ונאמר כי באת אדוני את יעקב וגאל ביד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Allow us, Adonai our God, to sleep peacefully, to waken again to life, our sovereign. Spread over us your canopy of peace. Page 211, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'amideinu malkeinu lechayim Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom ve'amideinu malkeinu lechayim ושמור את צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Praise you, O Lord, who spreads over us your canopy of peace, over all the people of Israel, and over Yerushalayim. The declaration of this Yom HaKippurim, found in the Torah, is on page 212. We rise, Ki Vayom Hazeh, for on this day atonement shall be made for you to purify you from all your transgressions. In the presence of Adonai you shall be pure. Ki Vayom Hazeh.
כי ביום הזה יכפר עליכם, לטהר אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני, לפני אדוני, לפני אדוני תתעלו.
Chatzi Kaddish.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, מעלמא יברח ידותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ויומכון וחיי תכל בית ישראל. Bagalav uvigizman kadri v'veimeru Amen. Yeshmei Rabba mevorach le'olam u'le'olmei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach ויתפואר, ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה, לעילה, מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן ביעולמה, ואמרו Amen.
The Amidah, the silent devotion for Kol Nidre night, is found on pages 213 through 221. Adonai Siftai Tiftach, Umi Yagid Tehilatecha. Shalom Rav Yisulamcha, V'yakol Yeshvei Tevel Tasim Leolam. Grant abundant and lasting peace to your people Israel and all who dwell on earth. For you are the sovereign master of all the ways of peace. May it please you to bless your people Israel at all times with your gift of peace. 218 B'Sefer Chaim, Bracha V'Shalom, Farnasa Tova.
Sefer Chaim bracha v'shalom u'farnasa tova nizacher v'nikatev lefanecha anachenu ve'alamcha beit Yisrael lechaim tovim u'leshalom Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom.
One piyut that we're going to do before the sermon, and that's the Ya'aleh on page 223. We call forward to the Ark, Harvey and Debbie Friedman, Josh and Carolyn Frank, Holly and Howard Greenfield, Richard Patofsky. Page 223, Ya'aleh, may our supplications rise up at evening, our pleas arrive with the dawn, and songs transform the dusk. I missed somebody?
So Ya'aleh, Yairadai sound similar? Pick whichever word, whichever syllable comes to your mouth, and we'll sing together. Ya'aleh, 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 Tachnuneinu me'erev ve'yavo, Shavateinu mi
Lisa and Josh Fuller to join us as well.
Ve'yira'e rinuneinu adarev adarev ve'yare vidyoneinu mi boker yale inuneinu me'yerev umi boker ve'yira'e bakashateinu adarev Adarev Ya'aleh En Kateinu Me'yerev Ve'yavo Elecha Mi boker Ve'yirae Eleinu Adarev Ya'aleh
May our prayers rise up at evening, coming to you with the dawn, transforming us at dusk. Ark is closed. You may be seated. Okay, so in most congregations, they say to close the doors and not let people in during the sermon. We have 15 grandchildren and a great-grandchild. I am used to rooms where somebody is always moving. So I say, anybody comes and needs to be let in, open the doors. Just don't let anybody out. There are certain lines in movies that we would call iconic. They've become part of our vocabulary, part of our culture. Things like, well, let's see. Let's see if you can guess them. I'll begin them, you finish them. Clint Eastwood said, make. In The Godfather said, I made him an offer. Yeah, you guys are good. Okay, now a little bit more difficult, but I think the funniest line in any movie ever. When Harry met Sally in the diner, and I don't even have to finish, right? I'll have. You remember that scene, huh? Okay. Now, the last, and maybe the most famous, it's Apollo 13. Houston, we have a problem. Well, last month, CNN did a 1-hour special on anti-Semitism in America. Now, it left out certain things it shouldn't have. It focused on things that were more political than anti-Semitism, but it was an important piece, and a good part of it was very well done, enlightening, and extremely concerning. My intention is not to critique it. My point is that when CNN comes to the conclusion that anti-Semitism in America has grown so much that they need to devote an entire hour of prime time, then, well, New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Chicago, Cleveland, wherever we have Jewish communities, yes, Houston, we have a problem. I want to make a personal distinction, which may or not be true. I think it's true. I don't believe there is more anti-Semitism than in the past decades. What I think is happening is that more anti-Semites are willing to express their anti-Semitic, anti-Israel views than before. After the world learned about what the Holocaust actually was and what anti-Semitism had led to, expressing anti-Semitism was culturally and societally just not acceptable. So the anti-Semites went back into their proverbial holes in the wall, but now they're coming out. They're coming out of the woodwork, and they feel much freer to either express their hatred or actually act upon it. We're also experiencing different ways that anti-Semitism expresses itself. The rise of social media, for example, gives people and groups the opportunity to express their hatred in a protected cocoon, in a way that they almost feel anonymous, and it allows them to recruit sympathizers. Attacking Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state by calling for BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions in order to try and destroy Israel's economic viability is presented by people who claim vociferously that they're not anti-Semitic. They're just anti the Jewish state. It would be like saying, I think the United States of America and its Constitution should be dismantled, for the American nation has no legitimate right to exist, but I'm not anti-American. Well, actually, you are. Because to deny a people its sovereign nation, to deny its right to exist, is anti-whatever nation that is, period. So we are nervous about this rise in anti-Semitism, and it's reflected in the enormous changes in security at all our Jewish institutions, our synagogues, our federations, our day schools, our JCCs. We have guards. You need picture IDs, sometimes metal detectors, fences everywhere. That's the clearest proof that things have dramatically changed for the American Jewish community, because none of us, of my generation, ever experienced that while growing up. My synagogue never had a security budget, I can assure you. And my synagogue in my teen years was this place called Beth Torah over on 163rd Street. The Hebrew high school was housed in that educational building. So I came to Hebrew high school. I studied. I went home. No guards, no fences, no gates, no problems. But lest we think it's a new feeling, let's get some real perspective. Our rituals reflect, in many ways, our historical circumstance. So, let me ask you a question. Do you know the original reason why the door is opened at our Seders around the time we refer to Eliyahu, right? We say, everyone please rise, we open the front door, and we say, Eliyahu HaNavi, right? And then somebody kicks the table to make the wine shake so the kids think somebody's there, right? I learned exactly what you learned. The reason is we want to symbolically welcome Elijah, demonstrating our love of peace and our hope for the future. It's a wonderful interpretation. I teach it all the time. It's not the real reason. It's not the original reason. The original reason is this. Right before we welcome Elijah, in the Haggadah, we recite verses from the book of Psalms, pleading with God to pour out his wrath on those who have persecuted, tormented, and literally murdered the Jewish people. We ask God to bring judgment down upon them. The door was opened. Ready? The door was opened to make sure that none of the Gentile authorities were outside listening in, hearing us call out to our God to punish those who had so mistreated the Jewish people, because it could lead to more pogroms, more suffering, more death. Here's one more. You all do apple and honey on Rosh Hashanah, right? It's pretty universal. Honey is sweetness, apples are newness, since the fall is a traditional time for apple harvest. But a lesser-known custom, which has become increasingly popular in recent years, is this. We say blessings over a variety of fruits and vegetables, each one being a pun on the Hebrew word. So here's an example. You hold up a date. A date in Hebrew is tamar. It's a beautiful Hebrew name, tamar. It means a date. And then we say, sheyitamu sonenu, which means, may our enemies perish. There are positive blessings, but overall the pattern and the theme of most of the blessings that we recite on Rosh Hashanah with those fruits and vegetables is a plea that God will annul the plans of those who seek to destroy us. So the reality is we have lived as Jews for centuries and centuries, expressing a hope that enemies that plot harm to Jews should fail in their efforts. That's the norm in Jewish history. Throughout our Jewish history, it could have been said by almost any Jewish community, anywhere in the world, but, and this is the proverbial but, not in America. At least that's how we grew up. America was the big exception. This was the place we could focus on apples and honey, sweetness and hope, not on worrying about attacks on us, not opening the door to see if somebody was listening in who wished us harm. No American Jew opening the door to welcome Elijah ever worried that there was someone out there wishing us harm, that they would be listening so they could accuse us the next day of calling upon our God to harm those who harm us. In fact, it's the opposite in America. We invite them, the non-Jew, the Gentile, to join us at the Passover Seder, to join us for the experience. It's an amazing thing. We invite them, we give them a piece of celery to dip in the salt water. That's the hors d'oeuvres, right? Then we give them a piece of bread that you can't even swallow because it's so dry. And we talk for 1 hour before we give them any food. And this is what we invite them to. And the crazy thing is they love it. It's a great evening for them. But now, we are watching specials on anti-Semitism in America. Now we are experiencing rampant anti-Zionism on the campuses we send our kids to, and hearing of attacks, some violent, some have even been murderous, on certain Jewish institutions. Orthodox Jews, dressed in their garb, are randomly attacked in Brooklyn, not even to be robbed, just to inflict bodily harm on a regular basis now. So we're nervous and confused and anxious about the future. How do we cope with this new reality? Not new reality for the Jewish people, but new reality for the American Jewish community. How do we respond? One of the reasons I think we are still not sure how to respond is that there is a new phenomenon, unknown in the past. You see, in past generations, there was no debate, no dissension, no disagreement among Jewish leaders or the Jewish people as to how to define and determine who our enemies were. They knew what an anti-Semite was, but today we're so divided that we can't even agree on what constitutes anti-Semitism. The left only recognizes anti-Semitism when it emanates from the right, and the right only sees anti-Semitism when it emanates from the left, neither willing to criticize and point out and call out the anti-Semites in their own midst. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance realized that people weren't even clear on what was anti-Semitic and what wasn't. And they decided to build an international consensus. They came up with a working definition that diverse parties could agree upon, a definition that would give policymakers around the world the tools to identify the problem. So why is that so important? Here's an example. Let's say you have a state in our country that has a policy which says, we do not do business with any company that expresses anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist beliefs or has anti-Zionist or anti-Semitic policies. Now, if BDS is defined as an anti-Semitic act, as it is in this universal definition, then the governor of that state can, according to American policy, boycott and sanction that very company that's trying to boycott Israel. If it's not called anti-Semitism, there's nothing they could do about it. They would have to give them a chance to do business with the state like anyone else. Now, the good news is, over 30 nations, including the United States, the European Union, and a number of NGOs, academic institutions, many local governments, many municipalities around the world have accepted this definition. The bad news is that some have refused to accept it. Why? Because it cites as an example in the definition of anti-Semitism the following. I quote, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of Nazis, denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of a state of Israel is a racist endeavor. That is considered anti-Semitism in this new definition. And that's why some countries and some groups wouldn't sign. They don't accept it. For them, comparing Israel to Nazi Germany and saying it's a racist endeavor isn't anti-Semitic. As you can imagine, many of the Arab countries were uncomfortable with that definition, so they didn't sign on. And then there are some Nazi sympathizers in Eastern Europe opposed to it. No surprises there. Zebras don't change their stripes. But here's the problem. Here's the shocker. Objecting to including BDS and the denial of the right of the very existence of a Jewish state. I'm not talking about boundaries, just the idea of a Jewish state in that part of the world we call Israel or Palestine. Objecting to that was a coalition of groups known as the Progressive Jewish Alliance. They objected. It's okay to say Israel has no right to exist as a Jewish state, and you're not an anti-Semite. Who's in that group? Americans for Peace Now, the New Israel Front, Teruah, Rabbis for Human Rights, and a few other groups that claim to represent Jewish values. Denying the Jewish people a right to a Jewish state in our historical homeland has somehow become a Jewish value for certain Jewish groups in America. Some groups claimed they were concerned that the adoption of this definition would undermine freedom of expression and suppress criticism of Israel. It's nonsense and they know it. The definition explicitly states criticism of Israel similar to that leveled against any other country is not anti-Semitism. In other words, if Israel is singled out for criticism, but other states guilty of the same or even worse offenses are not, then that criticism is anti-Semitic. It's not based on principle or conscience, it's based on Jew hatred. I can assure you that there is one thing we don't have to worry about. It is that there isn't enough criticism of Israel, or that debate over Israel's policy might be stifled. It will never be stifled. We debate it among ourselves. As my colleague and friend, Rabbi Stuart Weinblatt, wrote, rejecting this international definition of anti-Semitism is comparable to a person drowning in the ocean, refusing to accept the life preserver because they don't like the small print on the inside lining of the flotation device. So here's the truth, a truth we must understand ourselves, a truth we must repeat over and over again without any hesitation, without retreat. There is no difference whatsoever. No difference whatsoever between anti-Semitism and the denial of Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. Between anti-Semitism and Jewish statehood. Classical anti-Semitism denied the equal right of Jews as citizens. They said we couldn't be citizens in those countries. They took away our citizenship. That's the first thing the Nazis did. Took away German citizenship from the Jews. Today, anti-Zionism denies the equal rights of the Jewish people to its lawful sovereignty within the community of nations. Both are discrimination against Jews. When it comes to the United Nations or Yale University Council students or the California Teachers Union or NYU professors or Columbia professors, we're upset, we're outraged, we're appalled, but we're not surprised. It's what we expect. But when it comes from organizations populated by Jews, claiming to want to do right by the Jewish people, or from 100 rabbinical students who signed a petition objecting to Israel taking measures to defend and protect her citizens, when hundreds of missiles were being launched from Gaza at Israel's population, Arab and Jewish, and then to accuse Israel of violent oppression of human rights is something we just never expected to see. Houston, we have a problem. Something has gone terribly wrong. The 11-day conflict the other summer between Israel and Hamas unleashed a torrent of cries. Death to the Jews. There were attacks on Jews. There were attacks on Jewish institutions. Even places of businesses owned or associated with Jews around the world. There were desecrations of synagogues and Jewish cemeteries, because again, here's the truth. Those who hate Israel do not make a distinction between Jews and the Jewish state. Russia attacked Ukraine. Were there any calls for violence at Russian Orthodox churches? Of course not. No one would even think of making the connection between Russian Orthodox churches and what the state of Russia does. It doesn't exist. But for Jews and Israel, it does exist. The seat of anti-Zionism, ground zero now for denying Israel's right to protect herself or even exist as a Jewish state, is the American university campus. Not all of them, probably not even most of them, but too many of them, and some of the most important universities not only in our country, in the world. Our eldest Miami granddaughter, Diane Segi's oldest, our third, Amit, is in 11th grade. She'll be applying for schools next year. What is she going to encounter when she ends up on a university? Maybe nothing. Some universities are apolitical. They're just worried about the football game. But other universities are very political, and their Jewish students are being ostracized, being kicked out of organizations, being threatened because they are Zionist. And the universities are not taking the anti-Semitism on their campuses seriously. A Stanford University town hall was Zoom-bombed with racist and anti-Semitic messages and images. They were equal opportunity offenders. They used the N-word to insult the blacks in the room, and they used swastikas to terrify the Jews. Yet the University Diversity Committee, in its report, omitted all reference to any anti-Semitic aspects of the attack, of the incident, focusing exclusively on the racist part of it. There are always anti-Zionists who ask, why do you need a state? You're a religion. You're not a people. That's anti-Semitic in and of itself, because they dare to try and determine who we are. We have been a nation since the moment God entered into a covenant with Abraham and Sarah. We are Am Yisrael. We're the people of Israel. We're not Dat Yisrael. We're not the religion of Israel. We're the people of Israel. We are the people who lived on the land of Israel before any current nation even came into existence on the face of this earth. Or if they do accept that we are a nation, they want to know, well, why Israel? Why Palestine? Why not someplace else? The great Zionist leader and the first president of Israel was Chaim Weizmann. And he was once asked this question: why do you Jews insist on Palestine? There are so many undeveloped countries you can settle in much more conveniently. And Weizmann responded with this: that's like asking you why you drove 20 miles to visit your mother last Sunday when there are so many other nice Jewish ladies living on your street. Because Israel's our home, that's the answer. She's our mother. That's why we went there. Anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism go hand in hand. They are two sides of the same coin. Yes, they're the anti-Semites who hate us because we're different. We control banks, the stock market, the media, you know the whole story. That kind of anti-Semite, which comes mainly from the uneducated, the afraid, the insecure, particularly from the far right, from the white nationalist, the white supremacist, the neo-Nazis, it's been around for a long time, probably be around for a long time to come. But the real threat is from the anti-Zionism, which has made it possible for good old-fashioned anti-Semitism to raise its ugly head in polite and educated circles. The result of anti-Semitism being accepted in universities and in the most respected newspapers is that the uneducated and poorly adjusted believe they now have the support of university professors and campuses and anonymous groups on the dark web. They don't believe there will be any consequences to their actions. Of the hundreds of hate crimes committed against Jews in New York City since 2018, hundreds, many of them documented right there on camera, only one perpetrator, one single perpetrator has served even 1 day in prison. That's not the fault of the police. They arrest them. It's the fault of the DAs and the politicians who have somehow reached the conclusion that persecuting such anti-Semitic acts will just lead to more of them, so leave it alone. That's upside down. Punishing them for what they are, hate crimes, that will slow down the surge. The country is not anti-Semitic, not even close, but there are anti-Semites, just as there are racists, and there's homophobes, and there's misogynists in America. And in every country on the face of the earth that's populated by human beings, Because there are always human beings who are racist and anti-Semitic or anti-Catholic or anti-the other. But we are not a racist, homophobic, misogynist country. And through education, over generations, those human prejudices and vices can be shrunk and diminished. But our first obligation is to control it. And that can only be done by a society that has a no-tolerance position on racism and on anti-Semitism and on misogyny and on homophobia. No tolerance. People ask, what can we do about this rise in anti-Semitism? How do we even begin? The first thing is we make sure our institutions are secured. That's our number one obligation. That's called triage. That's what we have to do right now. It's common sense. On the battlefield, the first thing you do is you stop the bleeding. Then, after we secure our homes, and our synagogues, our JCCs, our institutions, then we push for no tolerance for hate crimes, for severe punishments to set an example, to make it clear, as it once was, it is unacceptable in the 21st century to speak anti-Semitic or any forms of hatred. In fact, it was unacceptable for decades after the Holocaust, but that was before anti-Zionism was promoted by the far-left progressives and white nationalists on the extreme right. Far right, far left, Jews lose. We only win when we're in the center. We need to demand greater accountability from colleges, which are now ground zero for anti-Zionism in this country. A high percentage of Jews attend universities, the highest percentage of any group in America. We must demand, just as the black community has correctly and boldly demanded, that we will not accept that our children are subjected to vicious verbal assaults or prejudice, or that they can be punished or isolated for just being Zionist. A Zionist is not the one who supports everything any particular Israeli government does. A Zionist is one who believes in the existence of a Jewish state in Palestine and works to make that state as safe and as good as it possibly could be. Israel is the nation that has risen out of the ashes of the Holocaust. It's the nation that rushes to send humanitarian aid around the entire world when natural disaster strikes. They were the first to come from a foreign nation to try and help in Surfside when the Champlain Towers tragically collapsed and stole so many beautiful souls from us. Israel is the country that rescues those rejected by every other nation, taking in over 800,000 Jews from Arab countries, 100,000 Ethiopian Jews who are facing annihilation, and 1 million Jews from the former Soviet Union, where living as a Jew was essentially a crime. She is the startup nation who shares her medical and technological discoveries with the whole world. And here's an historic truth. Everywhere we have lived throughout this world, we Jews have contributed disproportionately to better the lot, not just of the Jews, but for all people. This is the story we need to tell. This is the story our kids need to hear. This is the story we need to boldly be proud of. Perhaps the best known Soviet dissident, Anatoly Natan Sharansky, who grew up in the Ukraine and has, like so many people, been fixated on the tragedy unfolding there. He has many friends in the Ukraine and family. And this is what he said at a recent gathering in Israel. When I was growing up, Natan said, in Ukraine, in the city of Donetsk, we've heard a lot about Donetsk recently, there were many nations and many nationalities. There were those with identity papers that read Russian, Ukrainian, Georgian. This was not important, since there was not much difference between any of them. The single designation that stood out, Sharansky said, was Žid, Jew. If that was written on your identity papers, it was as if you had a disease. We knew nothing about Judaism, Sharansky said. There was nothing significant about our Jewish identity other than the anti-Semitism, the hatred, and the discriminatory treatment we experienced because we were Jews. When it came to a university application, for example, he said, No one tried to change their designation from Russian to Ukrainian. It didn't matter. But if you could change your designation of Jew, it improved your chances of university admission 100-fold. This week, Sharansky continued, I was reminded of those days when I saw thousands of people standing at the borders of Ukraine trying to escape. They're standing there day and night, and there's one word that can help them get out immediately. They just have to say, Jew. I am a Jew. Because if you are a Jew, Sharansky says, there are Jews outside who care about you and are waiting for you. There is someone on the other side of the border who's searching for you. Your chances of leaving are excellent. Boy, the world has changed, Sharansky said. When I was a child, Jew was an unfortunate designation. No one envied us. But today on the Ukrainian border, identifying as a Jew is a most fortunate circumstance. It describes those who have a place to go, where their family, an entire nation, is waiting for them on the other side in Israel. Only because there is a Jewish state can a Jew anywhere in the world say, Ich bin Ayid. Ani Yehudi. I am a Jew, and that will be their ticket to safety, not discrimination, not hatred, not a death camp. To deny the Jewish people that fundamental right of all peoples, of all nations, to have their own nation is the highest form of anti-Semitism in the world today, because it doesn't threaten one or two institutions, not a group of Jews in a particular city, but it threatens the entire Jewish people everywhere. Finally, I go back to a famous quote by Golda Meir. If Israel were to lay down her arms, there would be no more Israel. If the Palestinians were to lay down their arms, there would be peace immediately. We talked about all that fruit eaten on Rosh Hashanah by Jews around the world, with prayers that the plots of our enemies will be annulled. So our hope, our goal, our task is to reach a day when we can just say the blessings that ask not to annul the decrees of our enemies, but to ask that we will be fruitful and that we will be prosperous and that we will be able to continue to contribute to the betterment of all humanity, and that our merits and our mitzvot will be multiplied like the seeds of the rimon, the pomegranate. And may we then be able to enjoy, along with all nations, with all races, the fruits of peace and security, so that the vision of the prophets may come to pass. Lo yisagoy el goy cherev. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation. Humankind will not conduct war anymore, and none shall be afraid. And to this we can all say, Amen and Shana Tova Umetuka. We will continue our service on page 225 as we invite Rochelle Roberts, Jessica and Kevin Schachter, Michael Steinberg, Lynn and Mark Altschuler, and Julie and Jason Berkowitz to open the ark for Haneshama Lach on page 225.
הנשמה לך והגוף לך חוסה חוסה על המלאך הנשמה לך ובשלח אדוני, אדוני עשה למען שמך, הנשמה לך והגוף לך חוסה, חוסה למלאך, חוסה, חוסה
The soul is yours, the body is your creation. Have compassion on your handiwork. The soul is yours, the body is yours. Deal with us according to your nature. The ark is closed. May be seated for a moment. The theme, one of the themes of Kol Nidre is God's mercy. We're reminded over and over again that it tells us in the Torah that God is merciful, compassionate, patient, abounding in love and faithfulness. So throughout Yom Kippur, we keep on reminding God, remember God, you're merciful. You love to forgive. It's Yom Kippur. We invoke that mercy and ask for forgiveness. That's what Avinu Malkeinu is. Our Father, our King. Parents are merciful. Kings tend to be more strict with justice. So remind God, first of all, remember, you're Avinu, you're our parent. You're also our judge, but first you're our parent. And so this verse from the Torah that reminds us that God is merciful and wants to forgive is a theme of the Kol Nidre and the Yom Kippur morning service. On page 226, Cantor will begin at the top of the page, and then we will ask the following to come forward to open the ark for Hashem Hashem: Liliana Lobel and Anthony Gordon, Brian and Leslie Sharp, Alon and Raquel Arazi, Eric and Raquel Bassan, and Joan Spreckman. Top of page 226, and then we will open the ark for Hashem Hashem.
אל ערך אפיים אתה ואל הרחמים נקראת ודרך תשובה הורית גדול לא רחמך וחסדך תזכור היום וכל יום אל זרעך ידידך תפן אלינו ורחמך כי אתה הוא בעל הרחמים בתחנון ותפילה וענך נקדם כי הודעת לנו מקדם וחלון אפיך שוב כמו בתורתך כתוב ובצל כנפיך נחשף ונתלונן כיום וירך אדוני בענן תעבור הרבה שעה ותמחה שם כיום ויתייצב עמו שם תאזין שבתנו ותקשיב עמנו ואמר כיום ויקרא בשם אדוני ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא.
Adonai, Adonai, please rise as the ark is open, bottom page 226.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'chanun, Erech Apayim, V'rav Chesed v'yemet, Notzer Chesed l'alafim, Nosei avon v'fesha, וחטא ונקה אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטאה ונקה וסלחת לעווננו לחטאותינו ונחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו כי פשענו, כי אתה ראית וסלח ברב חסד לכל קוראיך.
Forgive us, our Creator, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our Sovereign, for we have transgressed. For you, Adonai, are kind and forgiving. You act generously to all who call upon you. The ark is closed. You may be seated. Another theme throughout Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah is the theme of God, hear our voice. Shema Kolenu, a very famous prayer that invokes tremendous emotions as we ask God not to cast us out when we are elderly, when we lose our strength, and to listen to our voice. Michael, our president, referred to the shofar a number of times. It's the major element of the Rosh Hashanah ritual. And remember, when we say the bracha, we don't say litkoa b'shofar, we say lishmoa. The mitzvah is not to sound the shofar, the mitzvah is listen. Listen to the shofar. Hear the music. Hear the cry. Hear the joy or hear the desperation. They tell the story about Mark Twain's wife who decides she's going to cure him of cussing. Mark Twain cussed a lot. That was his reputation. So she decided to follow him around all day and write down all the cuss words he used. Then at dinner, she would recite every one of them back to him, over and over again. Mark Twain sat there calmly, eating his dinner. He looks at her and says, "My dear, you have the words right, but you just don't have the music." What do we say to God? Shema Kolenu. Hear our voices. The words don't matter. Hear our voices, the strain, the fear, or the joy, or the happiness, the concern, the worry. Hear our voices, not just the words. The gift of listening is an incredible gift that God gave to us. That's why our most important prayer is Shema Yisrael. Listen, Israel. Hear, O Israel. We listen, we learn, we hear things we've never heard before during the high holidays. We ask God to hear our voices and for us to hear his voice. Shema Kolenu is found on page 233. The ark will be open. We invite Elizabeth Fackler, Adele Karp, Magali Ruiz and Heidi Tucker, and Renata and Claudio Bukareski to join us on the bima to open the ark as the cantor will lead us in Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, hear our voice, Adonai our God, be kind, have compassion, accept our prayer. Please rise as the ark will be opened.
Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem aleinu, v'kabel berachamim uveratzon et tefilatenu. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh yameinu, Chadesh yameinu, kekedem. Al tashlichenu milfanecha, veruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu, al tashlichenu le'et zikna, kichlot kochenu, al ta'azveinu.
Do not cast us away from you. Take not your presence from us. Do not cast us away as we grow old. Do not desert us as our energy and our strength wanes. Ark is closed. You may be seated. We have just a few more piyutim with the themes of Kol Nidre and Yom Kippur. The story is told about a 7-year-old boy and his family who were about to leave their native Poland to try and get to America and build a new life. The day before their departure, the father took the little boy to the town where the rabbi lived so he could get the rabbi's blessing. They remained overnight in the home of this rabbi, and the little boy slept in the study in the basement. Staring at all the holy books, the little boy could not sleep. In the middle of the night, he saw the rabbi enter the room, and he pretended to sleep. And the rabbi whispered, "Such a sweet child, but it's so cold." So he took off his coat, and he placed it lovingly on the sleeping child. Many years later, when the little boy became an old man, at 80 years old, when asked what the source of his kindness and his comfort was all these years, he said that 73 years ago, the Rebbe showed him love and comfort, and he placed his coat on him to keep him warm. And he said, "I am still warm from that coat. It has kept me warm all these decades." We seek God's presence because we want to sense his love, his warmth, his approval, his forgiveness. And we remind God, we're your people because you're our God. We are your children. You are our parent. Have mercy upon us. We are your vineyard, and you are our guardian. Page 234, we rise. We invite Adam and Lori Weeder, Marcos and Linda Ackerman, Andrea and Bevan O'Kay, Margot Brilliant and Robert Schwartz to join us on the bima. Kianu Amecha, we are your people. Ata Eloheinu, you are our God. Eloheinu v'le'avotenu v'imotenu. Top of page 234.
Eloheinu v'le'avotenu v'imotenu, selach lanu mechalanu, kaper lanu, כי אנו עמך ואתה אלוהינו, אנו בניך ואתה אבינו, אנו עבדיך ואתה אדוננו, אנו גאלך ואתה חלקנו, אנו נחלתך ואתה גורלנו, אנו צונך ואתה רוענו, אנו חרמך ואתה נוטרנו, אנו פולתך ואתה יוצרנו, אנו רעייתך ואתה דודנו, אנו סגולתך ואתה קרובנו, אנו עמך ואתה מלכנו, אנו ממירך ואתה ממירנו.
The ark is closed. You may be seated. As the service draws to a close, we have the confessionals, the Ashamnum and the Al-Chet, in which we talk about the sins of our community. Remember, it's in the plural. We have sinned. In other words, we couldn't have done all these things in this list. We need 2 lifetimes to get all this wrong. It happens in our community. We tolerate it. We assume part of the guilt if we allow these things to happen in our communities, or if we are part of the wrong that is listed in this long list of sins in the Ashamnu and the Al-Chet. The other thing, of course, is in order to know you've done something wrong, you have to acknowledge it. That's the first step in repentance. You have to admit, I got it wrong. So the story's told about a policeman who rushes to a phone booth. How many here still know what a phone booth is? Okay, just want to make sure. He rushes to a phone booth in a response to an emergency call from a man who said he was locked in the phone booth and he couldn't get out. He easily released the caller, and then he explained to him, "Sir, the door opens inward, not outward." The door in our lives, opportunities, they only open when we look inward and we see our culpability, we see our potential. But if we're going to look outward and it's always that person's fault, that group's fault, that's why I didn't succeed, then we'll never get out of the phone booth. We look inward and then we can go forward. That's what Ashamnu and Al-Chet is telling us. Look inward. When you're done looking inward, the door will open and you'll be able to go out. You'll be able to go forward in life. We'll invite the following for the Ashamnu, which will be followed immediately by the Al-Chet, to join us on the Bima. Michael Galinsky, Charlie Gans, Uri and Regina Strauss, Greg Rothschild and Elizabeth Edmonds, Angun and Karina Yavruku, and Calvin and Jessica Fox, as we rise for Ashamnu on page 235.
If you sing the loudest, you get double dessert. Ay, 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 Ashamnu, Pagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, ay, 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 Hevinu, Vehirshanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu, Sheker, ay, 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 lai, 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 ay, lai, 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 Yatsnu Ra, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Maradnu, Niatsnu, ay, 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 Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Tsararnu, Kishinu Oref, ay, 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 ya la 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 Rashanu Shichanu Tiavnu Tainu Tidanu ay 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ay da 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 ya la 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 ya la la la. And we continue the Al-Chet on page 237. So the question is asked, why do we keep on repeating this? We're going to say the Ashamnu and the Al-Chet many times, and we're going to say it every single year. So why keep repeating it? And again, I'm reminded of Mark Twain. I got to use my Mark Twain stuff because pretty soon nobody's going to remember who he was. Right? I read him. I didn't know him. So he said the following: "It's easy to stop smoking. I've done it 100 times." That's why, because it's easy to say, I got it wrong, but sometimes we get it wrong again. Hopefully, not 100 times. So the Al-Chet reminds us, it's really difficult to change our patterns and our behavior. It takes a lot of hard work. Page 237, Al-Chet shechatanu lefanecha. Al-Chet shechatanu lefanecha be'ones u'beratzon. Al-Chet shechatanu lefanecha b'yom etzalev.
We have sinned against you through immorality. We've sinned against you openly and in private. We've sinned against you knowingly and deceitfully. We've sinned against you by the way we talk. We've sinned against you by defrauding others. We've sinned against you in our innermost thoughts. We've sinned against you through forbidden trysts. We have sinned against you through empty confessions. We have sinned against you by scorning parents and teachers. And we have sinned against you purposely and by mistake. We've sinned against you by resorting to violence. And we've sinned against you by public desecration of your name. We have sinned against you through foul speech and foolish talk. We have sinned against you through pursuing the impulse to evil. For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us pardon us, and grant us atonement.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו מחלנו, סלח לנו מחלנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו אליך, וכעס וכזב, על חטא שחטאנו לבניך, וכפר שלך.
We have sinned against you by the way we do business. We have sinned against you in our eating and drinking. We have sinned against you by greed and oppressive interest. We have sinned against you through arrogance. We've sinned against you in everyday conversations. We've sinned against you through conspiratorial glances. We've sinned against you through condescension and through being stubborn. For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לבניך, ויהי הדבר שחטאנו לבניך.
We've sinned against you by plotting against others. We've sinned against you through selfishness. We've sinned against you through superficiality. We've sinned against you through stubbornness. We've sinned against you by rushing to do evil. And we've sinned against you through gossip. We've sinned against you through empty promises. And we've sinned against you through baseless hatred and by betraying trust. For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, and grant us atonement.
ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, סלח לנו, מחל לנו,
Remain standing as we turn to Avinu Malkeinu. The ark remains open. Page 243. We have sinned in your presence. We have no sovereign but you. Avinu Malkeinu chatanu lefanecha. 243.
אבינו מלכנו חטאנו לפניך, אבינו מלכנו אין לנו מלאכה אנתה, אבינו מלכנו עשינו למשמך, אבינו מלכנו.
Return us to your presence, fully penitent. Send complete healing to the sick among your people. Remember us favorably.
אבינו מלכנו החזירנו בתשובה שלמה לפניך.
Avinu Malkeinu Asureinu B'shuv Shlema Fanecha.
אבינו מלכנו שלח רפואה שלמה לכל ימיך.
Avinu Malkeinu Shlach Refuah Shlema L'cholei
אבינו
Yamecha.
מלכנו זכרנו בזיכרון טוב לבניך.
Inscribe us for good in the book of life.
אבינו מלכנו כתבנו בספר חיים טובים.
Inscribe us in the book of redemption.
אבינו מלכנו כתבנו בספר גאולה וישועה. אבינו מלכנו כתבנו בספר פרנסה וכלכלה.
Inscribe us in the book of sustenance.
אבינו מלכנו כתבנו בספר זכויות.
Inscribe us in the book of merit.
אבינו מלכנו כתבנו בספר סליחה ומחילה.
Inscribe us in the book of forgiveness.
אבינו מלכנו. אבינו מלכנו. אבינו מלכנו, עשה למענך, אם לא למעננו. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו ועננו. אבינו מלכנו, חוננו ועננו, כי אין בנו מעשים. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו. Choneinu v'aneinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu v'aneinu, Ki ein v'anu masim, Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, Aseh imanu, Tzedaka v'chesed, Ve'hoshienu.
Have mercy on us, answer us, for our deeds are insufficient. Deal with us charitably and lovingly, and redeem us. The ark is closed. Kaddish Shalem on page 245, which will be followed by the Aleinu.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעולמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי וחייכון ביום מחון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואימרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתבורך ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה שמי דקודשה
ברכו
לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעולמה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעולמה ואימרו
אמן.
תתקבל צלות דאון ובאותון דכל בית ישראל קדם אבוהון דיבי שמעיה ואימרו
אמן.
יש למה רבה מן שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואימרו
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמרו אמן יעשה שלום יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יעשה שלום יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואימרו
We rise the Aleinu on page 246.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגוי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נותן שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשה ויקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו וזולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום וישב אותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
In solemn testimony to that unbroken faith which links the generations of the house of Israel one to another, let those who mourn, those with Yurtzeit, remain standing to magnify and sanctify God's holy name. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 247. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, b'yomad yivrach yirutei v'yamlech malchutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'zman kariv yimramehem, Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach li'olam alamei amayah, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei nekudsha b'richu, li'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tujurata v'nechmata, damiram b'yama v'yimramein, Yehei shlama rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimramein, oseh shalom b'ramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Psalm 27 on page 248. Adonai ori v'ishi mimi yirah. Adonai is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear?
Adonai ori v'ishi mimi yirah. Adonai ori v'ishi mimi yirah. Adonai ma'oz chayai mimi efchad. Adonai ori.
One thing I ask of the Lord, this I seek, to dwell in the house of God all the days of my life.
Achad sha'alti meit Adonai ota avakesh, shivti beveit Adonai kol yemei chayai, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו.
Place your hope in Adonai, be strong, take courage, place your help in the Lord.
קבל אדוני חזק ומצליבך וקבל אדוני.
Before we conclude with Adon Olam, first a reminder to all the members of the Board of Directors to please remain after services to help with setting up for tomorrow. Otherwise, Michael just want to remind everybody, tomorrow's Yom Kippur, you should come. So it's, and we'll be here pretty much the whole day. We start at 9. Yisker will be someplace around 11:30 or 12. And when we reconvene in the afternoon, because everybody wonders about Nila, we reconvene for Mincha and Mafti Yonah, the story of Jonah at 5:30. Nila will start at about 6:45. Remember, it's very late in the year, so instead of sounding shofar at 8 o'clock like last year, we'll be at 7:40. So Nila will start at you're going to hold me to that, Alan? I can see, look, that smile on his face. You're holding me to that. Okay, we'll do it. Okay. About 7:40. About 7:40 will sound shofar. So we'll start the Nila at about 6:45, and at that time the doors will be open and we'll all be together for Mincha and Nila and shofar sounding. We conclude with Adon Olam on page 249.
Adon Olam. אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא להתנשא בחפץ הכל אזי מלך שמו נקרא אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא להתנשא בחפץ הכל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבעדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה, והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בדברה, והוא אחד, ואין שני, להמשילו להעבירה, בלי ראשית, בלי תכלית, ולא העול והמזרע, אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא, להינשא בחפצו כל. אזי מלך שמו נקרא, והוא אלי, וחי גואלי, וצור חבלי ביצרה, והוא ניסי, ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ויום אקרא, ביעדו, אף כדרוכי, בית ישן ויעירה, ועם רוחי, גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, אדון עולם אשר מלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, להינשא בחפצו כל. אזי מלך שמו נקרא, שנה טובה ומתוקה, מר חתימה טובה, שנה טובה ומתוקה. See you tomorrow morning, really early.
Keep us hungry for love. Keep us hungry for reconciliation. Keep us hungry for forgiveness. On this night of atonement, O God, sustain us and strengthen us. Good Yantav, Gemar Chatima Tova. I think you leave your books, your machzorim, right there in the book holders. So they'll be there tomorrow. Yeah, that's a new thing.